Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, and a little bit of Kentucky and Virginia. 8 states, 370 monitoring stations, 8,000 plus reaches. That's pretty comprehensive study.
One thing that we've done with the SPARROW models is that we have translated this information that was really point level information about here's what the stream load is at this site, and here it is at this site, and we have about 370 so sites in this current model that we're using. And with the SPARROW model, we've really converted that into a set of information for all stream reaches in the southeast region, and using the scale of reach description that we're using now, which is the RF1 model. That's about 8,000 stream reaches. Mm-hmm. We have a unique estimate of the annual load mm-hmm. in that reach. We have an estimate now of what the different source shares are in that stream reach mm-hmm. For 8,000 different stream reaches across the southeast region. And we also have an estimate of the confidence that we have based on the statistical error from having calibrated the model, what the upper and lower bounds of confidence are on that estimate. Mm-hmm.
The other thing that is unique about the Southeast model is that, well, not unique, but actually a nice feature is that we have a lot of terminal networks that lead to estuaries, and really nice estuaries, the Albemarle Sound, Pamlico Sound, Charleston Harbor, Tampa Bay. We don't have one single outlet for the entire model. We have several outlets. So the analysis does impact several estuaries. Mm-hmm. One major finding for phosphorus was, if you look at the map of predictions across the study area, you really see certain locations in the southeast that are very much highlighted, and they are usually areas that were both naturally rich in phosphorus and then disturbed by human activities, whether it's agriculture or mining, some sort of disturbance in addition to already naturally high phosphate content in the soil parent rock leads to just these sort of hot spots in the southeast.
The story for nitrogen is there's sort of two different layers of hot spots, because there's the map of where the sources are, and generally the sources that vary the most across the region are fertilizer and livestock. Most of the fertilizer application is in the coastal plain along North Carolina, South Carolina, and then down through Georgia. But interestingly, the other map is that, and this comes from the SPARROW simulations, is which watersheds are hot just in terms of the fact that they transport nitrogen at a higher rate to the stream. Mm-hmm. So the western part of the southeast regions, for example, Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee, the watershed characteristics are such that even though there's less nitrogen sources placed in the watershed, there is still a high rate of nitrogen transport to the stream, because they are just better transporters of nitrogen.
Right.
So those two, so really when you look at the final map of what's in stream, it's coming from a combination of those two layers, where the sources are and where the watersheds are more efficient at sending nitrogen onto the stream.